This is the new Panasonic S1 II E and the S1 II.
Panasonic brought us out to my hometown of Austin, Texas. So we're gonna review these two cameras, tell you how they compare against cameras like the Nikon Z6 III, the Canon R6 Mark II, and the Panasonic S5 Mark II.
We're also gonna show you how the 70 frames per second work on the new S1 II. The autofocusing has improved, so we're gonna be showing off that.
Crazy video capabilities for serious video professionals. So much more, but first we want to thank our sponsor, Squarespace.
Whether you need your own website, portfolio, store, gallery, if you can think of it, you can build it with Squarespace. It's fast, easy, it's intuitive, and it's affordable. So go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and check it out. You can get a 14-day free trial, and when you're ready to buy, use the coupon code Chelsea to save 10%. Thanks, Squarespace. Let's talk about the camera design first. It's a substantial camera body, which is nice. It's got a nice deep grip on it. And one thing that I like, there's a lot of buttons on top that make a lot of the common features that you'll want easily accessible. We have 2 record buttons, one in the front, one on the top. You also have a tally light in the front, which is nice for recording, and a tally light in the back. The flip screen flips 2 ways. You can either tilt it up, or you can pull it out and have a fully articulating screen, which is nice. The electronic viewfinder has 5.6 million dots, so it's really nice to look at. It's clear and realistic. Oh, and it has 2 card slots for people shooting professionally. And they thought of everything because you can transfer your photo between those 2 card slots. So if you've got to copy it off to another memory card and hand it off to someone else working on the project, that's possible. Or with a wire, you can connect it to an external SSD and transfer your photos there so you can share your product with someone or back them up. They're really thinking of people who are working photographers and video makers. There are a lot of features on this camera, and a lot of features means a lot of options, and a lot of options means a deep menu system. So I've got to say, when you're digging in, it can be a bit cumbersome to go through all of the different menus, but of course, like anything else, you get used to it. And they thought of this because you can copy your settings to another camera. So if you set up a camera the way that you want it, you can just transfer it to another Lumix camera and not have to worry about going in and setting everything up again. This is the new Lumix S1 II, and it's got some pretty impressive features. Now it gets 10 frames per second in mechanical shutter, but when you switch into electronic shutter, you get an astounding 70 frames per second. I was wondering if that was actually realistic, if it was gonna work, but it seems to be working really well. I've been taking pictures of these skateboarders at 70 frames per second with human auto tracking on, and it's tracking my subjects really well. I have had the tracking leave the subject a few times, but it easily pops back on to what it's supposed to, and I seem to be getting all the shots that I'm trying to get.
In our controlled sports autofocus test, the S1 II got about 73 sharp at 70 frames per second, while the S1 II E got only 46% sharp at 30 frames per second. So if you are shooting sports, pick the S1 II.
One thing I noticed is that it buffers really quickly. But you get used to lifting your finger from the shutter so that you don't use up your buffer all in one sequence. So that hasn't been a problem. It also has a new pre-shot feature where you can do a half a second, or a second and a half of pre-capture. That means before you're even trying to take the picture, it's capturing your photo. Pretty magical. When I'm taking pictures of the skaters, I'm trying to make their jumps look even more dramatically high by getting as low as I can. And their screen is great for that because you can either fully articulate or you can flip the screen up, and that way you can shoot low without having to lay on the ground. One thing when you're shooting action is that you're often panning, and now that they have the semi-stacked sensor, you don't get rolling shutter when you're shooting those high frames per second action moments.
On the S1 II, the S1 II E does have a rolling shutter problem that we'll talk about later.
Stills are great, 70 frames per second, but this is so good of a video camera. The options are absolutely mind-numbing. Like I can do 6K at 60 frames per second, and that gives me the ability to crop really deeply, which is so useful. So you can shoot a little bit wide because these people are jumping all around, and I can frame it in post. When I want to show them real slow, I can do 8 times slow motion with 240 frames per second and still get HD quality video. And that video seems to look really, really good. I'm amazed at how well it's keeping everything in focus. It's detecting the human shapes and tracking them as they're moving in and out. I was a little concerned about that. That hasn't been Panasonic's strength in the past, but I feel like they've resolved it. And I feel like even if you're like me, you're not focus pulling you can get action shots in focus. This is a camera you can really trust.
In our studio portrait test, we found that both cameras had great eye detect autofocus and a 1/250th sync speed, so they both serve as excellent portrait cameras.
The video capabilities on this are staggering. First, the stabilization is so stunning that I've been filming handheld and it looks like you're on a gimbal or it looks like you're on a tripod. Almost everything that you see has been shot handheld. You can do 6K at 30 frames per second with open gate. That means the full 3x2 sensor shape.
This is 6K open gate. This allows me to crop it vertically or horizontally because I have some extra room. And that way you can kind of make social and YouTube formats at the same time. After dark, we went to the famous bridge in Austin where 1.5 million bats leave right after dark. Testing the sensor stabilization for stills, I took 1 second shots handheld at 43 millimeters, and they were sharp. That's 5.5 stops below the reciprocal roll. The S1 II's low light capabilities really shined here. This is filmed in 6K, 60 frames per second open gate, and then cropped down and slowed down. It looks stunning, and the autofocus worked great. We did run into a problem though. Chelsea used the S1 II E to pan with this flying bird and noticed pretty extreme rolling shutter. Look at the Tilty buildings. We measured the S1 II's readout speed at about 11 milliseconds, very impressive. The S1 IIe's rolling shutter was about 3 times slower though, which is why these panning shots were ruined. For fast action, choose the S1 II over the S1 IIe.
Of course, it supports all the vlogs and tons of dynamic range, up to 15 stops of dynamic range if you happen to need it, if you're shooting a super high contrast situation like this.
We brought the new Panasonics to a honky-tonk bar to film the great Ellis Bullard. Handheld with autofocus, the Panasonics nailed every shot. While the band was well lit, the cameras also did great in the dark bar. Check out all the YouTube celebrities. I'm really pleased with the dynamic range I was able to extract with the video. It saved the shots in this contrasty situation. The still photos turned out great too, and I was able to use the stabilization to show the strumming of the guitars while eliminating camera shake. Notice no flickering in any of the video or stills, a sign of a pretty good readout speed. We spent more than 2 weeks rigorously testing these two cameras, and that wouldn't have been possible without our sponsor, Squarespace. Head to squarespace.com/Chelsea to start your own website, a website you control, unlike social media. Make your portfolio, video, or any business look great by using their professionally designed templates to create the beautiful, customized space you deserve. Get started with the free trial today, no credit card required. And if you love it, the coupon code Chelsea will save you 10%. Thanks, Squarespace.
It does ProRes RAW, either internal or to an external recorder. You can also do Blackmagic RAW to an external recorder. And if you need proxies for that, smaller files that are easier to share and edit, it'll record proxies too. You can sync up Timecode using Bluetooth in case you have multiple cameras that you want to switch between and audio syncing isn't reliable or precise enough. It has frame markers, and if you use the external XLR adapter, you can get 32-bit float audio, so never any peaking. Woo. Most of you aren't ever going to need all of those features, but maybe sometime you will, and the S1 II has it.
Let's talk about video autofocus. In the past, it was a bit of a painful spot for Lumix, but they have changed. They have made huge improvements, and we found that it was working extremely well. It was tracking subjects well while shooting. The footage looked beautiful. And we weren't seeing any of the pulsing and the autofocusing that we had seen in the past. So big improvements all around.
And now Bobblehead Dad is going to help me test the video autofocus on these cameras, seeing how quickly it can track changing subjects. This is a perfect test for vloggers who often need to film themselves.
At a glance, they all look great, certainly good enough for YouTubers and TikTokers. That just means I haven't nitpicked it enough.
Let's crop in and slow down 50% and look at the worst examples from each. Though it's 5 years old, the Sony a7S III still had the smoothest autofocus. Look at that bokeh. The Nikon did a little bit of an ugly pulse in and out. The Canon did the worst, focusing all the way in the background before pulling focus back to my face. Lumix's S1 II was overall very smooth, but I could see some pulsing. The new S1 II was overall very smooth and locked in, but I did catch it pulsing just a little bit this one time. Barely counts.
There's a saying here in Texas, tan staffel. Well, it's a saying everywhere. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. And we're seeing that with the fast readout speed of the sensor. Just like the Nikon Z6 III, the faster readout speed trades off dynamic range.
The only raw processor Panasonic gave us to work with was Silky Pix, and I'm not totally satisfied with how it's processing these images. Based on these preliminary results, it does seem like the faster readout speed of the 2 reduces the dynamic range over the less expensive 2E. And if dynamic range is really important to you, the higher megapixel S1R Mark II with its lower base ISO of 80 produced significantly better dynamic range and much more detail in recovered shadows than either of the S1 Mark II models.
So you have to decide if you're shooting RAWs and recovering lots of shadows, maybe you're better off with something like the S1 II than one of these two cameras.
I shot our low-light test at ISO 6400, and I'm surprised by the results. Even though the S1 II E had better dynamic range, it has slightly worse high ISO performance, but the difference isn't much. Still, for the ultimate in low-light, get the S1 II.
Panasonic gets that moving files on memory cards is a pain in the butt, so they're trying to get you as connected as possible. Not only can you transfer files between the cards and an external SSD directly, but you can connect directly to frame.io, and from there, exchange your files with lots of other creators, perfect for proper cinematic productions. They also have 2 apps, the Lumix Flow app and the Lumix Lab app.
The Wi-Fi performance was better than most other cameras at 23.5 megabits per second, but that still took 12 seconds per 24 megapixel RAW. Compare that to the iPhone performance you're probably used to, it's about 7 times slower. Instead, I would recommend using a USB-C cable, which is still slow. For USB-C, averaged about 1.2 seconds per RAW file.
So should you get the S1 II or the S1 IIe? For me, they're really well-rounded hybrid cameras. I didn't find any glaring problems with them.
And Panasonic throws in every capability. They really have creators in mind. So you have so many things that you can customize in video specifically, if that's what you're shooting.
I kind of gasped when they said the S1 II was $3,200, but this is the first camera since these tariffs have come out. Oh, and Panasonic does their manufacturing in China, which has 145% tariffs in the US right now. When you factor that in, it's actually incredibly cheap. And if you're comparing it against all the existing prices, well, those camera prices may very well go up.
I still consider the price a question mark because so much can change.
Yeah, they could lower it too.
The camera is very capable, and I think 70 frames per second, if you're shooting action and stills, that's incredible. And even the S1 IIe has 30 frames per second, so you're still gonna be happy with your action shots.
But if you were like a stills shooter, portraits, landscapes, I'd check out the A7R5, which is a little bit more new, but a little bit less used, and it has 60 megapixels. And if you're just a dedicated video shooter, the Sony ZV-E1 is a full frame camera and is $1,900, but it can't match all the features of this. It doesn't have 6K video, it's only 4K.
If you don't need the super high 70 frames per second, the S1 IIe is the more affordable option at $2,500. So you still get a ton of features, so I would recommend that.
Yeah, that's what most people should get. In the comments down below, let us know what you think, and don't forget to check out our sponsor, Squarespace.
Whether you want your own website, portfolio, store, gallery, or more, you can make it happen with Squarespace. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off.
Thanks, Squarespace.